As a club pole dancer, this was her first time stepping out to entertain a private client. The moment she arrived at the doorstep, she couldn't help but laugh. This house was massive, a full 3 stories tall. Excitedly, Annie rang the doorbell, and the young heir waiting inside quickly opened the door. Ivan, already used to this kind of life, casually handed Annie a bottle of imported sparkling water, the cheapest thing in the house. Without wasting any time, they headed straight to the 2nd floor. Standing by the bedroom window, Annie gazed at the breathtaking view, knowing deep down this was the life she had always dreamed of. But dreams were one thing. She wasn't about to forget why she was here. After their intimate encounter, Annie couldn't help but ask Ivan, how did he become so wealthy at such a young age?
My father. Короче, ладно, мой батя Николай Захаров.
Sorry, I don't know who that is.
Google him.
Google?
Yeah.
Hearing his response, she immediately pulled out her phone to search, and what she found left her in shock. Ivan's father was none other than one of Russia's wealthiest tycoons. Annie and her friends knew exactly what that meant. If she could win Ivan's heart, she would never have to worry about money again. But Annie made the worst possible choice. The better the beginning, the worse the ending. This time, Annie decided to show off some new dance moves, and after their fun, Ivan casually picked up his game controller and started playing. Meanwhile, Annie sat there thinking, wow, that was the easiest money she'd ever made.
You paid for an hour and there's still like 45 minutes left if you want to go again.
A few days later, Annie received an invitation and brought her friend to Ivan's house for a New Year's Eve party. The moment they walked in, her friend was completely blown. After a wild night of partying, Annie slept in until the afternoon. As she got dressed, she told Ivan she needed to head back to work. But Ivan wasn't having it. He wanted Annie to stay with him for an entire week. For Annie, it didn't matter who she spent time with, as long as they paid for it.
$10,000.
15. Cash up front.
Deal.
Deal.
And with Ivan's generous offer, she immediately went back to her club and told her boss she needed a week off. She didn't care whether he approved or not. After all, a month at the club wouldn't earn her anywhere near $15,000. Without hesitation, Annie returned to her apartment and immediately packed her things. Then, she began living life. Just like Annie, they were there to keep him company. One day, someone casually mentioned going to Vegas. Without hesitation, Ivan chartered a private jet and they were off to Las Vegas. Upon arrival, Ivan and his friends checked straight into the presidential suite. Expensive liquor flowed freely. The infinity pool was theirs to enjoy. And whenever they got bored, they simply hit the casino tables.
We are going in all in. Yeah, say.
We're going all in.
Whatever.
Always picked up the tab. But just like that, their extravagant week came to an end. Ivan told Annie that in a few days, he had to return to Russia. His father wanted him to start working.
Well, I'm gonna miss you.
And will you miss me or my money, Glad?
Well, your money,
A
Blair.
deal. But as they talked, Ivan suddenly mentioned something. If he got married in the US, he could become an American citizen. That way, he wouldn't have to go back to Russia. At first, Annie didn't take it seriously. But the more Ivan talked, the more serious he became. Looking into his eyes, Annie knew she'd be a fool to let this golden opportunity slip away.
3 carats.
What about 4?
And just like that, hand in hand, they ran into a small chapel in Las Vegas. In this city where everything moves fast, a wedding was no different from grabbing a midnight snack. What Annie didn't realize was that from this moment on, she wasn't stepping into the glamorous life of a wealthy wife. She was stepping into a nightmare beyond imagination. 2 completely immature people, in the sleepless city of Las Vegas, proudly telling everyone they had just gotten a diamond ring. That's when she ran into her longtime rival, Diamond. Diamond smirked and taunted her, saying, "This kind of marriage won't last 2 weeks." But Annie took those words as nothing more than jealousy. A dazzling 3-carat diamond ring sat perfectly on her finger, a luxurious fur coat worth tens of thousands wrapped around her petite frame. Annie was completely immersed in the illusion of happiness, but what's meant to happen will always come. Out. On the way there, the 2 men discussed their approach to the situation. Before long, Garnik and Igor knocked on Ivan's door. The moment Annie saw 2 towering men standing there, she froze. The first thing they did after stepping inside was confirm whether Ivan had really gotten married. To their surprise, Ivan casually pulled out the marriage certificate. Garnik took one look. It was real. If their boss found out, they'd all be in serious trouble. Wasting no time, he snapped a photo and sent it to Toros. The moment Toros saw the picture, his heart sank. Knowing he had no choice, he picked up the phone and called Ivan's mother, Galina, to report the disaster. Galina exploded with rage, cursing Toros out over the phone. In the end, she issued a strict order. The marriage must be annulled within 24 hours, not a divorce, an annulment. She warned Toros that she and her husband would be flying to the US on a private jet tomorrow. Then she hung up. Toros immediately changed into his suit and left the chapel, calling his men. No one moves. I'm on my way.
2 недели я тебя спал. 2 недели. И ты женился на проститутке? Ёб твою мать!
Prostitute!
Toros put his phone on speaker as he drove, screaming at Ani and Ivan the entire time. At first, Ivan didn't care, but when he heard that his parents would be arriving the next day, his face completely changed. Love? Marriage? Commitment? At that moment, the only thought in Ivan's mind was to run away.
We're going, but we are going!
Where is he going?
Why are they staying? That doesn't make any sense.
Ani couldn't understand why Ivan suddenly wanted to leave his own house, and judging by the look in his eyes, it seemed like he had never loved her. Garnik hurriedly chased after Ivan, who had run off. Meanwhile, inside the house, Ani and Igor got into a heated confrontation. Ivan was gone, and Ani was panicking. She had no idea what to do. Furious, she grabbed anything within reach and started smashing things, not caring about the cost. Igor's face turned pale. The furniture alone was probably worth his life, and if the destruction continued, he might as well be buried with it. With no other choice, he grabbed a phone cord and tied Ani up. When Garnik returned, he was shocked. He never expected Ivan's new bride to be this insane. Even with her hands tied, she managed to put up a fight, even biting Igor. Igor was furious. He would have taken her down right then and there if he could. Garnik grabbed a random cable, attempting to tie up Ani's legs, but Ani kicked him so hard that his nose was instantly broken. Not long after, Toros finally arrived. Looking at the mess, at Ivan's disappearance, Toros was absolutely livid. Poor Ani. She had no idea why Ivan ran, or who these people were. She was legally married to Ivan, so why was she being treated like a fraudster? Toros gave her a detailed explanation of her situation. Ani had no clue about her own position in all of this. This marriage was never about love. It was always a transaction. Yet now, she wanted equality. She wanted rights. What a joke.
And I plan on being with him forever.
No, don't give me that bullshit. Do not give me that bullshit. You don't love it.
She had bet everything on Ivan's wealth, assuming he had authority in his family. But now, it was clear. He had nothing. Unwilling to accept defeat, Ani raised her hand, flashing her diamond ring as if it could still prove her worth. But Toros simply ordered his men to hold her down. Then, he took the ring right off her finger. At that moment, Ani's illusion of happiness shattered completely. There was no fight she could win, no argument she could make. Even as she spoke of loving Ivan, she didn't truly believe it herself. With no other options, she resorted to screaming and losing control. But Toros had his own ways of dealing with situations like this. Once Ani finally quieted down, Toros called his lawyer. The order was clear. First thing tomorrow, they would file to annul the marriage. Ani calmed down slightly, and Toros removed the scarf from her mouth. Toros said that since she had been with Ivan for a while, he was willing to offer her $10,000 in exchange for annulling the marriage. Ani agreed on the surface, but deep down, she hadn't completely given up. After all, they were legally married. Even if Ivan's parents disapproved, Ani wanted to hear from Ivan himself. Would he stay, or would he divorce her? Either way, she needed an answer. And so, Toros, his men, and a determined Ani set out to find Ivan. Right now, Ivan wasn't answering his phone. Toros had already arranged for an emergency court hearing the next day. Before that, they had to find him.
Cool, Ivan!
With Toros and his 2 men by her side, Ani didn't take Ivan's friends seriously at all. It was as if she were the boss of these enforcers. Of course, Ivan didn't answer either of the calls. Not finding him there, the group headed to a restaurant Ivan frequently visited, but once again they came up empty-handed. Soon, night fell, and the cold got to Ani, who reluctantly wrapped the scarf that had once gagged her around her neck. Just as they were about to return to the car, Toros realized it was about to be towed due to illegal parking. He rushed forward, trying to negotiate with the driver, hoping for some lead.
I have a license plate and you get that car! You're fucked! No!
Toros was out of patience. If they didn't find Ivan before sunrise, the consequences would be more than he could bear. The group didn't even have time to eat. They went to internet cafes, pool halls, and coffee shops, but after searching everywhere, Garnik was so exhausted he was foaming at the mouth. Still, there was no sign of Ivan. Just as Toros was about to accept defeat, Ani's friend sent her a message. Ivan was at her former club. When they arrived, Ivan was already wasted. And the one entertaining him? None other than Diamond. The irony in the air was even thicker than the stench of alcohol. Annie looked at Ivan, unsure whether she should be angry or disappointed. Or maybe, deep down, she felt she had no right to complain either. Still, she kept asking him, could they still be husband and wife? But Ivan was completely drunk. How could he possibly discuss something like this? Toros had no time for this mess. He moved in to take Ivan away. Ani refused to give up, demanding an answer from Ivan, a clear stance on their relationship. Deep down, she knew Ivan was in no condition to make any decisions. But the fear of losing everything, especially things that were never truly hers to begin with, made Annie act irrationally. Watching Ani's ridiculous display, Diamond, who had seen through everything from the start, finally seized the moment. Under Diamond's relentless taunts, Annie, unable to vent her frustration in any other way, lunged at her. They had the strength of adults, but not an ounce of dignity. The onlookers didn't care who got hurt. Their only concern was whether the club's furniture would survive. Finally, Toros dragged everyone out of there, bringing the ridiculous scene to an end. But Ani, battered and bruised, carried a sense of grievance that words couldn't express.
Bonds. But when things got real, who actually cared about Ani's feelings? If anyone did, it was Igor. From the beginning, he had stayed silent, yet his gaze toward Ani was always different. Toros pulled the car to a stop in front of the courthouse. To prevent any further mishaps, he decided to wait there until morning. At dawn, the lawyer arrived to take them to the hearing. Ivan, still drunk, had no idea what was happening. But that didn't matter. Their case was moved to the front of the line. The judge took one look at the still intoxicated Ivan and chose to turn a blind eye to his condition. But just as he was about to annul the marriage, a problem arose. The wedding had taken place in Las Vegas. According to the law, they had to return to Las Vegas to dissolve the marriage. The court here had no authority to do so. Toros was stunned. But to Ani, this was another opportunity. As they left the courthouse, she kept trying to wake the drunken Ivan, hoping he would take responsibility. No matter what, he owed her an answer. Toros, however, had no patience for this. He told Ani to get in the car. Ivan's parents were about to land. If she wanted answers, she could ask them directly. And so, the group headed to the airport. The rest of the men waited in silence, while Toros stood respectfully in the private hangar, waiting for the two heavyweights to arrive. Before long, Ivan's mother stepped off the plane. She didn't even bother acknowledging Toros, striding straight past him. Toros hurried after Ivan's father, informing him that they now had to go to Las Vegas.
Меня зовут Нора. Я очень рада наконец с вами познакомиться. Это такая честь быть женой Ивана.
Ivan is not your husband.
У тебя уже из новых коллекций?
Да, из новых коллекций.
Ma'am,
Vanya is not in love with you. Understand?
For the first time in her life, Ani spoke in the most polite tone she could manage. But the response she received? Not even a shred of dignity. Rage, confusion, humiliation, and frustration. Every raw emotion poured out of Ani, directed straight at Ivan. The most ridiculous part? She asked him why he obeyed his parents so blindly. At first, Ivan didn't want to answer. But seeing Ani's relentless badgering, he finally told her the truth behind it all.
And thank you for making my last trip to America so fun.
yeah, you had fun?
Yeah. Let's go.
And just like that, Ani's fantasy shattered completely. But she wasn't willing to give up so easily. After everything she had been through, she had gained nothing. So she turned to Ivan's mother and made a demand. If they wanted a divorce, she wanted half of Ivan's wealth. Otherwise, she wouldn't board the plane. At that moment, Annie ripped away the last bit of dignity she had left. Stripped of all pretenses, she stood there, utterly exposed.
Do you have a house? Do you have a car? All gone. Your life and lives of your family and friends, everything will be destroyed.
Completely broken, Annie no longer had the arrogance she once carried. Real power never needed to be flaunted. All her shouting, all her struggles, nothing more than a desperate mask for fear. At this point, there was nothing left for Ani to gain from Ivan. The only thing she received was a quiet cup of sake, handed to her by Igor. When they arrived in Las Vegas, the group went through the necessary procedures. The absurd marriage was finally erased. Afterward, Toros instructed Igor to take Ani back to the villa to collect her belongings. The next day, she would be sent back to her apartment, along with $10,000 in severance. That night, back at the villa, Igor stayed by Ani's side. He didn't try to take advantage of her. He didn't try to make a move. But reality was harsh. Ani was worthless in Ivan's family's eyes, and Igor, a penniless man who genuinely cared for her, was just as worthless. The next day, Ani packed her things and left Ivan's villa. On the way back, Igor withdrew the money and handed it to her before dropping her off at her apartment. As she looked at this foolishly kind man, Ani wondered, maybe only an ordinary man could offer real love. But as she collapsed into Igor's arms, sobbing, she was still thinking about that irresponsible man, Ivan. As for whether Igor would ever be appreciated, I think we all know the answer. All right, see you in the next episode.